Well, welcome everybody. This is the IEEE Boston Consultants Network. We're going to start our January 28, 2026 meeting. Let me share some slides. Welcome to the monthly meeting. This is the IEEE Boston Patriots Network pre-Super Bowl meeting. We're being sponsored by Nelson Research tonight. Our board of directors are myself as chairman, Mark Fitzgerald, and Charlie Sweet as treasurer. We are a non-profit IEEE organization funded solely by our membership. We're all volunteer. Each member gets allocated their own web page. They're allowed to network. Our dues are $80 a year for IEEE members and $100 a year for non-IEEE members. Some links here you can look us up at. And our consultants are searchable on the web even. And we have a LinkedIn group. So we're starting a little bit late, but doing introductions. In a few minutes, we'll have Larry Nelson speaking tonight. And he's going to speak for approximately an hour, and then followed by a Q&A. I think we're going to end a little bit early tonight because not many people are on the particular meeting, but hopefully members view this in the members only area. Our next meeting is February 23rd, 2026. It is about effective content marketing and how to help clients find you by Joanna Rothman. And with that, I'm going to look over and read our event for tonight and tell you about what that is. So this is PE license, a professional engineer license for consultants or professional people. Our speaker tonight is Larry Nelson. Larry operates his own consulting company, Nelson Research, since 1980. Larry's published technical articles and created technical training programs for universities as well as industry. He's been granted several patents, and he is licensed PE in the state of Massachusetts. He has served as an expert witness in several litigations that has advised insurance companies on several cases to determine root cause of failure. He is a diplomat of forensic engineering, DFE, with the NAFE. He is a platinum level consultant with Microchip Corporation and has a broad technical background across many industries. Larry is listed with Parallax and DigiKey as a consultant. He is a longstanding member of the Boston CNET and AICN, as well as a founder of the Worcester County Section Consultants Network. Currently serves as a director on the board of Massachusetts Society of Professional Engineers. You can find him at mchipguru.com. And with that, I'm going to, let's see, stop sharing. Easier said than done with all these things here. Oh, I am not sharing. Great. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry, and he can start his PE presentation.
Okay. And hopefully that is sharing now.
Yes.
Okay. What I'm going to talk about today is the PE license and being a consultant. This webinar is focused primarily on what it means to be a licensed PE, how to become a PE, and why you might want to become a PE, along with how does being a PE work with being a consultant. So let's jump right in. There we go. Does a consultant need a PE? Well, if you advertise yourself as an engineer to the public, yes, absolutely. A PE license is not required to do consulting. I started my consulting business in 1980, and I didn't get my PE license until 2014. So that was, 34 years without a PE license. Most of the consulting work I did initially was programming small computers for businesses. Then I transitioned to designing electronics for specific applications. There was for a time a software PE license, but that no longer exists. My experience is that people that write software should follow the standards of care that PE holders do. I also did expert witness work later on before I was licensed. Courts do not require you to be a PE, but it definitely increases your credibility and shortens the vetting process. The issue with having a license is you often need to get licensed in any of the states that you're going to be working with. The opposing counsel will put a target on you to try and get you disqualified by claiming that you are practicing in a jurisdiction that you're not licensed in. They will file a complaint in those jurisdictions you are licensed in simply to make your life difficult and to try and get you to back down. What is a PE license do for you for these particular issues on this slide? Well, for the top left, it's a product failure. At least it certainly appears that way. I don't know of too many traffic light signals that are supposed to catch on fire like that. Having a license is a good thing in this case because public projects often require a PE to be able to work on this project. The top right is a solar power farm installation and requires drawings signed and stamped by a PE. The lower left is from a court case where an electric car caught on fire. A PE is not required for being an expert, but again, it's a very powerful credential in court. In the bottom right is a PC board failure in an industrial environment. And in this particular case, the company that was working on these things actively discouraged any involvement of a PE. They absolutely did not want me to get my PE license since I was working for them at the time. And they discouraged anybody in the company that wanted to get a PE license from doing so. Well, why would you want to get a PE? It's a powerful credential proving credibility. And it also allows you to identify yourself as an engineer to the public. I do a lot of expert witness work. A PE license is given a lot of weight in court by the judge and goes a long way towards being accepted as an expert quickly. In Massachusetts, I can state I'm an engineer, and there is no pushback due to me having a license. There are many engineers working for various companies in Massachusetts that do not have a license and don't need one because they're covered by something called an industrial exemption. Their work is under that company and they're safe. If they were to advertise to the public that they're an engineer, they may be accused of practicing engineering without a license and can end up in court. Prior to being licensed, I would explain that I'm a consultant and an expert in various technical disciplines, but it's kind of a fine line. I'm sure many of you have heard that old saying, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. So you've got to be kind of careful in what you're doing. So why get a PE? If you're going into independent practice without the PE license, you can do a support role under the supervision of a PE. With the PE license, you can do independent practice and you can sign and stamp drawings. I have never signed and stamped a drawing or a document. I haven't needed to. For regulatory and compliance, you can do advisory work only. You cannot certify anything. You can review and approve for compliance if you have a PE license. If you're an expert witness or doing legal consulting, your credibility can be limited as a witness, whereas it's very quick and easy to get qualified as an expert witness if you have a PE license. For project leadership, you can manage teams, but not have responsible charge without the PE license. But with a PE license, you can lead projects in responsible charge. For government and public contracts, oftentimes you're excluded from the contracts without a PE. For specialized services, sometimes you can only do advisory work, whereas with a PE license, you can perform high liability reviews. That does open you up for close scrutiny. Marketability and fees. If you're lower credibility, your fees are more limited. If you're higher credibility, you get higher fees. In short, without a PE, you're limited to support and advisory roles. With a PE, you can legally practice independently, sign off on designs, access government contracts, and build authority as an expert.
Larry, we just had welcome in John Peck. We just had John join us. I don't know if you want to just like briefly fill him in on the slides he missed, the prior ones. Just a little summary, maybe.
Let me bounce back for a second. The big takeaway here at this point, and I'll hit it again later. If you advertise as an engineer, to the public, you have to have a PE license. Otherwise, you can be in big trouble. It's not required to do consulting. I started consulting in 1980, got my PE license in 2014. With these areas here, the top left is a traffic light signal that caught on fire, product liability type of a thing. PE license to get government contracts, quite often you need that. Or you need to be working with a licensed PE. If you're setting up a solar farm, like the second pick, then you would need a PE for a lot of the drawings to sign off on things. The lower left is an electric car fire. Wasn't absolutely necessary to be a licensed PE, but it sure boosts the credibility. And the one on the bottom right, I was an employee working for a company when they had a board failure, and they actively discouraged anyone from being a PE. So again, why you would get one, it's a powerful credential, prove credibility, and allows you to identify yourself as an engineer to the public. This is where we were just wrapping up. You can find yourself limited with lower fees without the PE license, but it can sometimes cause other issues, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. What does it take to get your PE license? Well, you have to earn a 4-year degree in engineering from an accredited engineering program. You have to pass the fundamentals of engineering exam. You have to complete 4 years of progressive engineering experience under a PE. And these are listed requirements from various state licensing board, as well as the standards published by NCEES. You have to pass the principles and practice of engineering exam. That's the big exam, the PE exam. The PE exam is discipline specific, whereas the fundamentals exam cuts across all disciplines. You need to get references from other licensed PEs. You need to have a portfolio with experience. And you have to have board approval in your state in order to be allowed to sit for the exam. They can deny you from taking the PE exam if they don't feel that you're adequately prepared for it. For overcoming the shortfalls, they want you to have experience under a PE, but not all engineering is traditionally done by PEs. Software engineering typically does not have PEs. They did for a short period of time, but that license path has gone away. A lot of work that's done in industry for product design is not done by licensed PEs. And as I stated earlier, one of the companies that I worked for actively discouraged people from being a PE. Electronics design is usually done under the industrial exemption. supervisors that are not PEs can give a recommendation. And PEs familiar with you and your work can give a recommendation. Because of my involvement in IEEE and in various consultants networks, I became friends with a lot of different PEs, and I had no problem getting PEs to go through my work and my work history and write letters of recommendation for me. Another good way to connect with PEs is to join the National Society of Professional Engineers and your local state organization. If you're in Massachusetts, the National Society of Professional Engineers and the Massachusetts Society membership is combined together into one membership. If you don't have an FE exam, some states allow substitution with the number of years of experience. I had over 25 years experience when I sat for my exam, and Massachusetts has an allowance where if you've been a practicing engineer for enough years, you can go to the board, have an interview, and be exempted from the fundamentals exam and sit for the actual PE exam. However, that can cause problems if you're trying to get licensed in other states, because some other states have absolutely no mechanism for not having taken the fundamentals exam. So if I wanted to get licensed in New York State, I'd have to go back and take a fundamentals exam and jump through a bunch of hoops to get a license there. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. For cost, what is your investment beyond time? And believe me, you're going to spend a lot of time getting your PE license. The fundamentals exam typically costs about $225. The PE exam is $400. The record transmission fee per state is $100. So every state that you get licensed in typically has a fee from NCEES of $100 for every state that you have that sent to. Practice exams, depending upon what your discipline is, typically are $35 to $50 a piece. You have to have an approved calculator, which is typically $17 to $25. The only approved calculators at this time are Casio, FX115 and 991 models, Hewlett-Packard, HP33S and HP35S models, but no others. And those particular calculators are discontinued, but they are listed as still being accepted. So you can pick one up used and you're still allowed to use that. Texas Instruments, all TI-30X and TI-36X models. Any Texas Instruments calculator must have TI-30X or TI-36X in its model name. If you show up at the exam with a calculator that's not on this list, you will not be allowed to use it. After you pass the exam and you get your license, you're probably going to want to get a seal or a stamp or both. Seals can cost from $35 to $110, stamps from $21 to $37. You can get an electronic stamp for $10 to $29. And lately I've heard that they're going to be charging an annual fee on the electronic stamp because of the way that they want to track it and make sure that it can't be forged. Some other expenses, your initial license fee was for me, it was $175, which is a one-time fee. And renewal of my license every 2 years in Massachusetts is another $150. Hi, Bruce.
Hey, Larry, I wanted to say hi. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.
27, agreed.
Continuing education might be required based on the state. Massachusetts does not have that, but a lot of other states do. And NAFI, which I'll talk about in a minute, does have continuing education requirements. The National Society of Professional Engineer dues are $299 a year. And the Massachusetts Society of Professional Engineers is included in the National Society of Professional Engineers dues.
That's
But there are some states that are not integrated and you'd have to pay for both.
all healthy food.
If you're thinking of going into expert witness work, something that could really help is an organization called NAFE, the National Academy of Forensics Engineers. And their dues, depending upon your level within them, range from $150 to $350. So if you want to practice in multiple states, you can imagine that it does build up pretty quick as to what it'll cost you. If you want to do expert witness work, I highly recommend joining NAFE. You must be a member of NSPE in good standing to join and keep your membership in NAFE at a member grade or above. There are levels of membership as you gain experience in depositions and testifying. Students can join for $50. Affiliate members are $150, and associate members are $225. To be a full member and be able to call yourself a DFE is $250 after you meet the requirements of having done depositions and testifying in court. If you've done a larger number of depositions and more court testifying, then you can go up to a senior member for $300 and all the way up to a fellow for $350. It's basically credentialing.
Eating healthy.
So Larry, we're over $1,000, I'm guessing, just to even kind of get in the ballpark to get a PE, and then you have to continue paying?
Yep, it can be. That's why a lot of people don't do it unless you have to. Now, if you're doing certain types of mechanical engineering, you can't survive without it. If you're doing civil engineering, you have to have a PE license, period. There's no way around it. Some resources that you can look into: the National Society of Professional Engineers, NSPE, the State Society of Professional Engineers for Massachusetts, it's the MSPE, and then NCEES is the one that controls doing the exams, and they have a service where they will keep all of your credentials so that you can have those sent out to other states if you need to add other states to do engineering. Yes, Charlie.
A couple of things. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. A long time ago, got my FE. I took the test,
Yeah.
and then I went into industry. And as far as I could tell, in 40 years or 35 years of practice, in multiple industries, I have never seen another PE that I've been working with, or at least that there's been no one in these organizations that has showed that certification. Now, this is in an industrial setting, mostly electrical design, PC board design. And so the supervisors and so forth, my managers, as far as I can tell, never had PEs.
Yeah, they
Is this
typically don't.
typical of what you've seen? And because I have trouble justifying this. Even the consultants that I've worked with, as part of a consulting firm, have not.
Yeah, if you're doing software work, if you're doing electronics design work, especially if you're doing it for a company, then even if that company is hiring you out somewhere else, then usually you're covered under an industrial exemption type of a thing. So you don't need that PE license. You were smart in taking the FE back when you did, because it's good forever. So if you ever decided you wanted to become a PE, you have that credential and they won't take it away from you. But you're absolutely right. It can be very expensive and very rare for those who do the types of things that you and I and Mark typically do. The big reason that I finally pushed and pursued getting it was I was doing more and more forensics work. And when I would go into a deposition or a court appearance, they would go all the way back to high school and ask me questions about everything I studied, where I went to school, what classes I took, where I worked, what projects I worked on, everything, all the way up through to the present day. Whereas after I got my PE, I walked into court one day to testify in a case. The judge looked at me and said, I understand, after I was sworn in, he says, I understand that you're a licensed PE in the state of Massachusetts. I said, yes, Your Honor, I am. And he says, do you feel that you are qualified to discuss the topics that you're going to be asked to discuss in this court case to the best of your knowledge? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, good enough for me. Anybody else have any problems with that? And all the lawyers just kind of shrank down and I was accepted.
So a related question. Thanks for the clarification. If I have, let's say I get a PE, then don't I need an area of specialization that would be much narrower than just saying I'm an electrical engineer? For instance, I do power cabling, or I do circuit board design of a certain type, a certain voltage,
Yeah.
certain current,
Yeah,
or
you
something.
don't have to drill down to that level, Charlie. For people like us, you've really got two major categories. You've got power engineering, which is more for people that would work for the grid companies.
Mhm.
And you have electronics engineering, or for electrical engineering, which has a very broad swath. I was asked questions on that final PE exam that I had never seen before in or out of college. Things about cell phone towers and communications protocols and all of this, which I don't work with. And that's why you have to sit down and do all these practice exams and all of that type of work when you're getting your PE exam.
Okay.
And then, they used to have, as I said, they had a software one, but that's gone away. So you'd probably end up taking the electronics one.
So the electronics doesn't say differentiate between like a motor controller and a gigabit datacom application, or something microelectronics for implants. Those
No.
are three totally different things.
Oh yeah, they're all different, and it doesn't differentiate at all. For
Wow.
that matter, I can go out and do engineering work on a power station if I claim either by experience or education that I'm qualified to do that. Now, somebody can question me and then I have to prove it. And if I'm not qualified and I claim to be, then that puts me into a situation where my license is at risk. So it's kind of
Yeah.
self-policing from that viewpoint.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
You don't want it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say you can do all kinds of things. I had a situation where I had done all the calculations and designed the roof portion on my porch on the side of my house, and I way over engineered it. And then years later, I was changing out some custom storm windows to go to standard storm windows, and I put in some 2x4s just to fill in the gaps. My interpretation was I didn't need to pull a permit to put in those storm windows. However, our local building inspector said I had to. So I paid for the permit and I paid fines and so on and so forth. And my wife said, well, what if they ask about engineering drawings? And I said, I'm going to sketch it out on a napkin and I'm going to seal it and stamp it and I'm going to hand it to him with all the calculations because he's not a PE, even though he's the
Yeah.
local building inspector. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, math is math. And for those particular equations, that was a piece of cake. Okay, other resources for PE, Massachusetts State Board, they're in downtown Boston. I got the phone number there, and I've got the email address and the web link for their webpage. So for key summary or key takeaways for the summary, you may not need a PE license. Licenses are state by state. If you do engineering for the public, you need a license. And courts do not require you to have a license to provide expert testimony, but it can help with your credibility. Now, one other thing that I want to state so that you understand it, sometimes having that PE license can be a bit of a liability. In one case, one of the companies that I was working for as an employee was very upset that I had a PE license because they felt that it would open them up for more liability by the simple fact that they didn't necessarily have me consult on the design of other equipment. So if they had a piece of equipment that failed and somebody got hurt, and during litigation, someone said, "Oh, do you have a licensed PE on staff?" Yeah, we do. Did he review this design? No, he didn't. Why not? Which could potentially increase their liability. So that's one thing. Another area is when it comes to the expert witness work. Prior to getting my PE license, I could go into the state of New York and I could testify as an expert. I couldn't say I was an engineering expert, but I could testify as an expert. And the court was fine with that. And there wasn't really anything the other side could do against me. However, now that I have my license, if I go into New York and I go into a New York court, they can look at me and they can say, "Oh, well, do you have a New York PE license?" No, I don't. And then they would argue that I was practicing engineering by providing a report to the court. And the court would basically poo-poo them and say, he's an expert. We're going to hear him. But then that attorney can go to the Massachusetts State Licensing Board and say one of your PEs is practicing engineering in a state that they're not licensed in, and can try and raise all kinds of concerns and issues. So oftentimes I might have to get a waiver from the state's board, and not all states are open to doing that. A lot of states will look at you and say, "Oh, well, you're only coming in to testify. You're not doing any design work here in the state. You're going through and examining a design, and it's only going to last a week or two. No problem. Here's a waiver." Other states may say, "Well, you have to be licensed, but we'll license you by comity," which basically means give us a copy of your license and a check for this amount of money, and we'll license you in our state. So it all is state by state dependent. So that's basically what I've got here. And I'll go into a Q&A type thing, but I wanted to bring this up. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to my website so you can see what's going on there. And I'll leave this slide up while I'm talking and taking any questions, so that you can copy down my email address and my cell phone number, as well as my website. And if you want a PDF copy of these slides, send me an email and I'll reply with a copy. If you're interested in working with me as a consultant, email or call, and we'll see what we can do. I'm limiting the amount of hours that I have available for consulting nowadays, since I've retired from any and all full-time gigs, and I'm doing primarily expert witness work and a few customers doing electronics engineering support. So with that, I'll open it up to any other questions.
I've got a question for you, Larry.
Sure, Mark.
How many hours do you estimate? There's multiple exams involved in this. There's probably even some research that you did before you became a PE, just like, hey, what is this PE thing?
Yeah.
And each stage you spent, I imagine, tens of hours at each stage. Like, oh, I'm considering PE. You probably spent, who knows, countless hours like considering it and looking into it, getting all of these contacts that you're looking at here, and perhaps even getting mentored. Did you have a mentor, and how many hours did you put into each one of these phases, getting the FE and then the PE license and then all these other things that you had to submit paperwork for and get certified for, and then now you have to continue to pay every couple of years. How much effort is this?
Well, I probably put in close to 100 hours preparing my packet, which was a sanitized version of all the various designs that I worked on over my career. I didn't take the FE exam, but I did have to go and have an in-person meeting with the Board of Engineers in Boston. So that was about 8 hours. It was only a couple of hours at the board meeting, but you have to drive in, park, go to the meeting, and then drive out afterwards and so on. So figure a good 8 hours for that, and a few sleepless nights because I anticipated walking into that board meeting with them looking at me saying, well, you've been doing engineering since 1980. Now you finally decided to become legal. But they didn't view it as that. They viewed it as the fact that all my consulting work was being done for companies. So they felt that I was well within the industrial exemption. Their big concerns were, why on earth would I want a PE license? And what did I plan on signing and stamping? And one of the things that to this day they're really concerned about is people getting a PE license and then signing off on drawings that they're not qualified to, but because they've got a PE, they can sign off on it. And unless somebody questions them and goes back and pulls into that design, that's referred to as plan stamping, which is against the law. But there are people who do that just to make the extra money because it's a lot cheaper to pay somebody an hourly premium for the 5 minutes it takes them to sign and stamp a drawing than to have them involved through the entire design and verify all the calculations. So once they realized that I was doing it as a credential for expert witness work, and that the only thing I planned on signing and stamping might be an expert report for the court, which I haven't had to do as far as a stamp or anything. So 8 hours for that. Now, preparation for the PE exam, I bought the practice exam and I spent probably 3 months, I would guess every other weekend, 8 hours. I'd been an avid snowmobiler and I would go up to Vermont to go snowmobiling. So it was a 4-hour drive up and a 4-hour drive back. My wife would do the driving and I would sit in the passenger seat taking practice exams. So there was a lot of effort and work on that. My son and I spent some time together studying. He got his PE in power, although he did not sit for his exam when I sat for mine. So there was a lot of hours studying for that.
Thank you, Larry. I have a question. Do you happen to know offhand if California has an exemption for the PE exam? Sorry, the FE exam.
I am not sure. I'd have to go to the California uh, licensing board and check because they will lay out what they've got. There are several states that do have an exemption based on the number of years experience. Typically it's 15, 20, 25 years, and they'll give you that exemption. But like New York has no exemption. So even if you're a licensed PE in another state, if you didn't take the FE, you've got to take it before they'll even consider giving you a license. But New York is kind of strict in another area as well, in that if you're doing forensics investigations and you go, for example, to a fire scene and examine evidence at that fire scene, not only do they want you to have a PE license or work with someone who has a PE license, that's a way around it, but they need you to have a private investigator's license. So finding someone with a PE license and a private investigator's license is not an easy thing to do.
Hey, Larry?
Yeah.
I do a fair amount of work internally on root cause analysis.
Yep.
And most of that doesn't involve outside legal entities or lawsuits. It's normally product is working kind of flaky in the field. Let's fix this. And normally, by the way, it comes down to a combination of poor software and marginal hardware design where the ideal parts would work just fine. But because the real parts, parasitics and other things cause problems. And normally you can't just write down equations and easily prove it.
Right.
Often hard to get root cause. Is that sort of, it's kind of detailed design analysis and root cause. It's not necessarily legal, but is there a market for that as a PE?
Absolutely. I have lately worked on an electric vehicle case where the car caught on fire and did multiple millions of dollars of damage at an exotic car dealership. And this particular electric vehicle was a prototype supercar. And being a prototype, they built like 10 of them and no two were the same. So I did spend quite a bit of time going through trying to figure out what the root cause was, which we never really got to a root cause other than the fact something within the vehicle failed. But they had tried to blame it on the external charger, and I was able to prove that it couldn't have been that. So there was a lot of analysis there. I've had other lithium-ion battery fires where I was able to prove that the smart charger they thought they had wasn't really smart. The wires that hooked up, for example, to the thermistor temperature measurement within the battery pack came into the plastic housing of the charger case and didn't go anywhere. So the temperature was never being monitored by the circuitry.
Yep.
There were solder balls on the board, and this had mostly through-hole components. And the solder balls on the board were big enough to short pins together on the ICs. And we bought 3 exemplars, and every one of the exemplars had that where there were the solder balls in there. So manufacturing was bad.
Wow.
I've had electric fans that didn't have procedures well documented, and their quality control. They'd have a shipping container with however many gross of these fans fit into it, and they were built by, I don't remember exactly now, but let's say they were built by 10 different assemblers. They would go into that container and they would take 5 samples out, and they would test those 5 samples. And if all 5 were good, they said, up, the entire lot's good. So
Yeah.
statistically, they didn't even get one from every assembler.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So, there were issues there. I had a case where they had a fire that was caused by the failure of a big industrial type battery charger, like what you would find at car dealerships for charging 12-volt car batteries and jump starting vehicles. And the individual was doing that, and left a set of batteries on charge for his homemade electric vehicle, and the batteries outgassed hydrogen, which ignited and set fire to his house and burned his house down. And I found the fault within the charger where one of the diodes had shorted, and I found change orders by the manufacturing company that made the battery charger, where they changed the ratings of the diodes, and they changed the way that they were mounted to a much heavier heat sink.
Mhm.
So that kind of pointed a smoking gun at them, until I examined the remains of the 12-volt, or supposedly 12-volt batteries. And what he had done was he had claimed that he was using 6-volt golf cart batteries in series, 2 of them, and then hooking them up to the charger to charge them. Okay. Except
Yeah.
a bunch of batteries that were on the pallet were 8-volt batteries.
Oh my God.
And obviously you can't hook 2 8-volt batteries in series and charge them with a 12-volt charger and get them to charge. So he was charging 8-volt batteries off of a 12-volt charger. And quote, well, they were just charging a little faster.
Oh
And then he
boy.
left the house and went shopping or whatever, and had the hydrogen ignite and catch on fire and burn the house down. So that
Great.
was very quickly settled once we got to that point.
How did you get the ECOs, the change orders?
It was in discovery by the attorneys,
Oh, okay.
and they
Okay.
request all of this documentation.
Yeah.
And they were able to, within the time window, they were able to find that they had redesigned the charger, and the changes that they had made on the charger,
Yeah.
they said were to enhance the charging capability. And
Yeah.
during deposition, I said, yeah, I suppose you could claim that that was to enhance the charging capability if part of the charging capability was such that the charger shouldn't fail and fail shorted with arcing.
Yeah. Right.
So, but yeah,
Got a question for you on, so let's say that I'm in quality assurance, and I'm probably an engineer, although maybe it doesn't say that in my title. I don't know. Are there PEs out there that are in quality?
there are some, but again, they're usually a PE within a certain engineering discipline who's migrated to quality. When I had quoted the fact that they weren't doing adequate QA inspections on the fans, The attorney from the other side said, "Oh, so now you're a QA expert." And I said, "No, I'm an electronics expert, but I did spend a year doing QA work for a company that specializes in making electronics equipment for the government. And we did a lot of work on sample sizes and lot qualifications and so on." And he went back and flipped through my resume, turned kind of red, and discontinued that line of questioning.
The other thing is you mentioned smart batteries. So let's talk about smartphones that aren't smart.
Uh, as the years go by, they put more and more energy density into the smartphones because everybody wants their phone to work all day without having to stop and charge it and then charge it at night. So you got a lot of energy in those batteries. And they don't always have the best of charge monitoring systems because you're fitting a lot of things into a small space. And a lot of people don't take it as a warning when their phone starts to swell up. So my daughter had a Samsung phone at one point, and all of a sudden her case popped open and wouldn't close. And I looked at it, saw that the battery was swollen, and I said, "That's it, you're done with this one." And it was one of those that had the battery soldered in. So we took it down and got a replacement battery for it, and then it was fine after that. But a lot of people would take a little bit of tape and put on it and say it's good to go and keep using it. Another area that I see a lot of cases happening, but most of them get settled out of court for one reason or another, are vapes, which have the lithium ion battery in them, 18650 cell typically, to provide power. And in a lot of cases, those who are vaping want to get more vapor out of that vape pen. So they will go in and modify it with some instructions they found on the internet where they reduce the resistor or put another resistor in parallel with the one that provides power to the heating element to vaporize the juice. And it results in getting more vapor out of it, which is fine, but it also puts a lot more strain on the battery. In addition to that, a lot of times they don't have room for battery protection circuits inside the vape pen. So they put it into the charger for the vape pen. And you say, okay, that's fine, it's acceptable, except they put a USB connector on the vape pen. And John Doe is sitting at home and he can't find his vape pen charger, but he's got his cell phone charger right over here. And look, the plug fits. So he plugs it in and it charges it fine, except it doesn't have the battery protection circuit now for if something should go wrong. So we see cases like that.
Yeah. Related to that, I'm sure you do some DFMEA type problems where, let's say, we have this problem sometimes. You have a fan, okay? Your fan prevents a thermal problem. But what happens if the fan dies from old age and now you no longer have the fan? So the ICs overheat.
Yeah.
And okay, well, if they overheat in a nice way, you draw more current and the fuse blows. Great.
Yep.
But if they die in another way where that they don't draw more current until until stuff starts burning. At which point you have a fire, and some things like batteries are, when hot they explode.
Yep.
So do you deal with a lot of cases of that type where it's secondary or tertiary failure modes that get excited and that causes your
Sometimes I do. I have not done official DFMEA analysis in any of the cases that I worked on. But I have done it when I was working for Applied Materials for our product design stuff for new products. One of the things though that I did run into was a company that did satellite receivers. And you've got a satellite dish out on a pole or out on your roof. And then you've got a box in the house that provides power out to that satellite dish to power the low noise amplifiers and so on. And the way that a lot of these systems work is if you've got TVs upstairs and TVs downstairs, you have one dish in two boxes and you just kind of daisy chain everything together. And that's fine. But in this particular case, one unit had been assembled wrong where the power which went through the coax cable that carried the signal as well had been reversed in one of these units. So you had the power from two units, plus to minus, minus to plus, shorted together out through the splitter box and powering the dish. And of course, they were having poor reception. And one of the things that they noticed was that the coax cable right near the connector was melting. Now, the company came out and found out, oh, look, the signal splitter has failed because the diodes in it are blown. Well, we'll put a new signal splitter in. Yep, okay, it's working again. And then all of a sudden they notice, oh, look, this cable was melted. Well, rather than dig in to find out why the cable was melted, the technician cut the end off the cable back to where the coax was good, put a new end on it, screwed everything back together, tested it, it worked. Okay, we're good to go. And off he went. And as I argued in deposition, if it had been me, I would have looked at that and said, there's something wrong here. I would have taken both of those cable boxes and the splitter, thrown them in the back of my truck, taken new units or refurbished units out of the truck, put them all back together, and sent the others back to the factory to be retested and verified. And that would have solved the problem. But instead, the guy fixed everything. It was up and working again. And all of a sudden, there's a fire in the bedroom downstairs. People got injured. House was severely damaged. One heck of a lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, you get that and something similar if you do something where you have load sharing. And sometimes one of the loads steals almost all the power. And that overheats. The other one seems perfectly fine. So that overheats. And then that stops working altogether. And all of a sudden it dumps into the other one and you got to fire one way or another. Or, yeah.
Or cascade
Anyway.
failure.
Yep. Well, thank you. I think this was very enjoyable. I'm sorry we didn't get more of a crowd. And I guess, where's Mark?
Yeah, I think I enjoyed the presentation, so that's it was good for me. I hope some of our members will view this up on the website, but why don't we call it an evening? I posted our
Yeah, and anybody that sees this on the website afterwards, if they want to reach out to me to get a copy of the slides or anything like that, they can feel free to. And I sent you a copy, Mark, so I think you might have them available on the website as well.
Great. So I'll be putting the PDF up on the website as well as the Zoom files. Appreciate everybody for attending. John, do you have any further questions?
No, this has been helpful, Larry. I was considering in the context of the expert witness work that I do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, more than happy to talk anytime, John, if you have any questions or no, worst case, you'll call me and I won't be able to answer you right away. or you'll email me and it may take a little while. If you do email me and I don't get back to you in like a day or two, feel free to reach out again because my email comes to my cell phone and it simply means it got buried in with everything else and I forgot about you, in which case I apologize.
Appreciate the offer.